Sharing the agenda in the chat. And here we go. And if you're on YouTube, let me know you can hear me. Okay. I've spent a lot of time working on phase 1 testing, so that's good. We're putting the pedal to the metal on getting some refinements in and getting that into a place we can work on. Thank you. I know a couple of teams have taken a look and given us a lot of awesome feedback on it so far. We are honing in on what would look like a version 1 release, any potential parameter changes and things like that. Age is doing some work on figuring out the scoring parameters for Gossip Sub V11. That's a big item that is not completed yet. These scoring parameters there's no defaults in place. They're very specific to the expectations of the network and the channels that you're operating on. You know, the expected load and messages and things like that. So there's some work being done using the Protocol Labs test ground simulator to pick these parameters, and I hope that we'll have these done in the next week and a half or so. On that note, I think that we're overdue for just a general networking call. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of things people have learned and have questions about. So I think Wednesday, in 6 days, we're going to do a networking call. I'll pop up a suggested time for that. On the testnet front, Natasha looks good. I know everyone's working their asses off still and getting in awesome refinements and things. We are, based on feedback and based on discussions we've had here, we do intend to do a dress rehearsal of a testnet launch with like a 2 or 3 day end of life, so that people can run through the motions, try out the different tools and things before a mainnet deposit contract's put up. Currently, based off of, I think one of the bottlenecks here is getting some of the bug fixes and refinements in the Launchpad, which is being actively worked on. But so that's why we're not doing this tomorrow. But the intention, I think, at this point is to, in the second to last week of September, post the deposit contract for this. Sorry, Skynet's distracting me on the chat. He just put a joke. Anyway, dress rehearsal, testnet launch. The intention is to put up the configuration parameters and the launch pad associated with that and all the other things in place around the 21st of September that week, and to do the dress rehearsal testnet launch 1 week later. We can talk about that now, but we can talk about the preparations and things kind of out of band. Any questions or thoughts on that dress rehearsal testnet launch? The expectation would be we take it very seriously. We give the community a chance to run through a testnet launch again, but then 2 days after, so we have no commitment to keeping up our nodes or block explorers and all that kind of stuff. It also gives a chance for block explorers and other tooling providers and stuff to try their stuff out again. Questions? Thoughts? Cool. So that's a few weeks from now. So over the next week, we will do some more stuff on that. Okay, that's generally what's going on with testing and releases. That's the kind of next iterative plan on testnets. Ben, you have something for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we plan to do a practice hard fork at some time on Madasha, and whether we should start planning it.
Yeah, been thinking about that one too. So there's two options here. One would be to do it before we do a mainnet launch. The other would be to do it before we have a fork on mainnet. Um, I see the value in doing one soon. I also see it as an additional complicating factor in everything. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on prioritizing that in the next few months?
Either is fine with me. Don't know what other views are.
Given that there's an existing strong preference toward launching toward not doing things that delay the mainnet, does it make sense to test the Medasha hard forking machinery long before we'll need the hard forking machinery on mainnet?
That's kind of where I lie, but I do also think that someone should do a quick, at least write up on what that would even look like in terms of conditioning it upon an epoch and things like that. At least so we have a clearer plan when the time comes. I'm of the mind that when a hard fork does need to happen on mainnet, it will we will do it on kind of some local transient test nets, and then we'll do it on something like Medasha or whatever exists at the time. So we will certainly practice, but I don't know if practice is the priority in the next few months.
If we did practice a hard fork, are we talking about perhaps just changing the fork struct, or are we talking about kicking out a validator or rejecting a block? Or
I mean, at the bare minimum, changing some parameter. We could kick all your validators out too.
Yeah, that seems like the most achievable thing if we were going to do it. I'm not even sold that we should, but if we were going to do it, I would suggest that as opposed to trying to take a shot at some more complicated scenario.
But we might need to blacklist a block as well. So maybe we want to do that if that becomes a requirement to be a client.
That's more of a
I guess
choice
we could also, there's all sorts of things we could do. I think we perhaps don't want to just speculate on things that we're unsure about. There's a large range of things we might want to do. But if people feel strongly about a block, we can. I don't know. I'd be leaning towards not getting too complicated with trying to simulate forks when we've already got a lot to do before launch.
Yeah, that's fair. Anything else? Testing releases, testnets.
Quick update here. So the attacknet had a few problems with this backup. Three clients on that are finalizing 100% participation. Then I'm working on to revamp network testing and reviewing some clients.
Cool, thanks, brother. Okay, moving on to client updates. Let's start with Prism.
Yep. Hey guys. So we've been receiving really good feedbacks on DOS vectors. So we have been addressing them one by one, just trying to do a really good job on those. We've also wrapping up addressing all the feedbacks from the CoinStamp audit. So this will help us to get ready for the future audit. we started working on implementing, exploring the E2 API. So the current tentative plan is to have this supported for mainnet. And then we started researching on weak subjectivity sync. So trying to scope up the work on just how much there is. We've been fixing the slashing bot, the slasher bots. We optimized the slasher from the Medesha accident. So we're also making sure our slashing protection DB is interchangeable. And we're also implementing the UX for the validator client exits end-to-end workflow. And then on top of that, we fixed a few things for our interrupt mode. So that should be working today. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. Let's start.
Hey, let's see, the past few weeks, we fixed a big memory issue that was preventing us from syncing Medasha. Now we prune unfinalized states, whereas before we were holding them all in memory. And we've also fixed a separate bug that was also preventing us from syncing Medasha. We had a recursion in our fork choice, and a long period of unfinality caused the stack limit to be reached. So we fixed that as well. And we're looking at just replacing the fork choice entirely with something a little bit more separate. And we are also working on adding the phase 1 types and parameters so we can at least start doing things with them, at least, making proofs or whatever. That'd be a first step for that. Other than that, we're still basically working off of Medasha, trying to get synced and trying to propose a block. I don't think we've managed to do that. We our ETH1 processing is still not, I don't think, good enough to propose a block. So that's kind of one of the final blockers, I think, for that.
Nice. So are you all able to get to the head at this point, or not quite?
So those bugs, we just fixed them yesterday. So I haven't actually gotten to the head yet. I haven't turned it on today, but we'll see. I think
Cool.
yes, but remains to be verified, at least by me.
Sounds good. Thank you. Teku.
Hi everyone, this is Jem from Teco. Along with a couple of minor several bugs, we fixed user-reported block proposal letters, which seem to have been caused by missing deposits from the ETH1 node. So we added validation around that, and also there was block proposal letters that were due to inclusion of attestations from different forks, and that became apparent when the Medalla was not finalizing for a good amount, and we fixed that as well. We've had huge improvements in attestation effectiveness. We're almost there. We also are thinking about our fluid publishing locally produced attestations and using the mesh when only propagating messages from other peers. We're curious if other teams are already doing this. We've implemented the Unicode password normalization rules that went into EIP 2335, and lastly, we're up to date with the V3 version of the slashing protection interchange format.
Sweet.
That's it.
Yeah, on the intention is to when we go and specify all the v11 parameters to have flood publishing set to true. I think that might be the default. I don't know if anyone has that enabled or not for now.
Yeah, it would be good to get. Would be good to know what other clients are doing, but
Yeah,
that's probably what.
Okay, Nimbus.
Hi. So let's start with the audit. We had our phase 2 audit that was in part on the cryptography and also the consensus part of NBC. Crypto is still ongoing, and regarding the consensus part, the auditors highlighted several potential for malicious attestations or blocks to exhaust the system memory, because we have a quarantine system, and there are a couple of situations where an attacker could make the quarantine absolutely huge. So now we are moving to using bounded buffers and explicitly dropping either the peers or the blocks once we are filling, because that's normally a corner case and it shouldn't happen normally. Otherwise, we still have a couple of issues on Medasha. Our current focus are to be able to run Nimbus without restarting every once in a while. For that, we need to address 3 issues. Number 1 is the log file that is filling disks for end user, and also taking a couple of dozens, even hundreds of gigabytes on our AWS node. So we will move the default login to something much less verbose. And we will raise, people have been asking to differentiate their own attestations and blocks versus the noise coming from the network. So we will implement that. Second issue is the database that is filling disk. So far, we didn't have a database running, and this is something that we are working on. And the last one is a long-standing problem. It has been significantly improved, but we still have a RAM usage issue. So it's still probably in libp2p with some asynchronous timers that are holding objects and not freeing them, and then this is holding RAM. Lastly, we are still maintaining on multinet scripts. Prism is working, so we are now able to test, for example, a very small network with a split of 8 times 64 Lighthouse, Nimbus, and Prism node to check if we can reach finality. So I encourage maybe Deku and Nodestar's team to look at those scripts and maybe try to add their own clients. And of course, we can help you on that. It's in the Eth2 client multinet repo.
Great. Are y'all just manually triggering those network tests at this point, or are you looking into doing some sort of CI with it?
Well, the thing is, our CI, we are already at 1.5 hour of CI,
Yeah,
so
okay.
it's a bit difficult, especially with mainnet params.
Yeah, I'm definitely
Because
interested in doing some sort of nightly build on something like that, so we'll take a look at what y'all have.
Okay.
Great. Lighthouse.
Hello, Paul here. So been up to a fair bit in the past couple of weeks. We fixed a deadlock that had been plaguing us for quite a while. It was a sneaky little read-write lock somewhere. Interesting scenario. We have a write-up on the blog if you're interested in, or use Rust or Tokyo. We fixed a bug in our pruning that caused the database to get too big. We've been implementing the HTTP API, the standard one, got through the beacon endpoints now, sort of chugging on downwards through. We've been trying to looking into attestation inclusion, some metrics to determine kind of what is good and what is bad. We're working on some UX fixes, just trying to generally make Lighthouse a little bit easier to use, addressing people's feedback. We have a new team member starting next week, which is pretty exciting. I'll let them introduce themselves when they're in, but we're looking forward to having someone with their experience on board. We have Gossip 1.1 in master, and Adrian has been working to define some parameters for the specification. Our slasher found some unique slashings that we don't think were found by anyone else on the network yet. At least they haven't been slashed. So we're waiting to see them go through, and I think that might be some of the first slashings we've done with our slasher, which is kind of cool. We have been working on defining the slashing protection interchange format, so we're implementing that as we go. And we're kind of just chugging along because we have 2 audits, kind of 1.5, 2 audits starting in early October. So trying to get everything in before that. That's it from me.
Awesome. And was the person here that you wanted to introduce?
Sorry, no, they're not. They will be here perhaps in the next meeting.
Yeah, okay, cool. Gotcha.
Gonna get some suspense going.
Thank you, Paul. And Trinity.
Everyone, I have an announcement today. We're actually going to move forward with tabling the ETH2 efforts on Trinity for the time being. Those resources can go into the imminent mainnet launch. That being said, the project is definitely open to open source contribution. So if anyone listening wants to get involved, please reach out.
We'll miss you, Trinity.
We're just going away for the time being. The project's still there.
Perfect.
Sweet. Thank you, Alex. Okay. Any research updates you want to go over?
Do we want to talk about the phase 1 changes?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a quick on it. So we had if you're following phase 1, there was this kind of, there's a requirement that for a crosslink to be formed, it must have come from the immediate prior slot, a committee from the immediate prior slot. Although this was to avoid some of the complexities in trying to do accounting across multiple slots. This ends up being, this is a pretty brittle design. So there's currently a couple of PRs up in phase 1 that does allow for cross-linking in the non-optimal case. And in doing so, we've actually revamped the way that attestations are being accounted for over time in the beacon state in general. Instead of storing all these pending attestations, we instead store bit flags related to each validator and their participation. Although this is certainly a divergence from phase 0, it actually ends up being a much cleaner way to do the accounting. Changes related to both of those are being tested and under active review. If you want to take a look, take a look. If you're following the phase 1 stuff, there's semi-significant changes, but in terms of the optimal kind of validator case, it's actually the same, if not simplifying. And most of the public interfaces and the way that you think about cross-linking forming are generally the same. It's more about internal accounting on non-optimal cases. But happy to dig in deeper if anybody, as people review, if you're taking a look at that stuff.
Do we have any back envelope number on what the state saving is like after removing pending attestation?
State size savings.
Yeah.
It's negligible compared to the validator set size. That was definitely not a driving factor in doing that. It was more of the way that we're tracking crosslinks. It definitely was a simplifying factor on the crosslink accounting. Yeah, I don't know the back of the envelope calculations. There might be a 1/2 savings or something, or a 3/4 savings on that particular accounting data, but it's definitely not the driving factor.
Got it.
Other research things? Other questions?
Just a quick update from our side. We are trying to build a crawler using Rumor. So we have contacted Proto to help us with this. Yeah, we have right now a first implementation that uses the discovery protocol, get a list of peers. And at this point, we are not doing gossip. But that would be like the next step. And the idea is to keep track of the score of the nodes on the network and have this kind of monitoring system in the network. So this is where we're at right now.
Cool. Thanks, Leo. Other research updates? Great. Terrence asked a question about weak subjectivity sync. Yes or no, is it a main requirement? The prioritization of feature requests today, and the progress in having this documented with PTPsec. Having something in place at or very soon after mainnet launch is a requirement. Due to the way that you can construct alternate histories, if you don't have any sort of weak subjectivity when you show up to the network, a matter of weeks, maybe months, somebody can construct alternate histories for free and at least make it an annoyance to sync. There are obviously protections. You might need to be semi-eclipse for somebody to be able to get this off on you. But if we don't add something relatively soon, then an attacker can cheaply make sync kind of a nightmare. In terms of being able to expose you to chains that finalize that are not, quote, canonical chain. The easiest thing to do is to have just a finalized root and to reject chains that don't have that finalized root and still do block sync from Genesis. But ultimately, having some sort of starting from a state is going to be a better UX, and if one client does it, everyone's probably going to have to do it. In terms of the documenting things in the P2P spec, what we can do is document kind of the security requirement here, but I don't want to put a full requirement on how that's handled at this point. And then in terms of the prioritization of the feature requests,
I'd say it's low priority but very high reward. So, and it's definitely being treated as a client side like tool or utility. It's not really a network level spec, at least in the current version of how we are doing weak subjectivity checkpointing. When we do eventually move to weak subjectivity sync, starting from specific states, we'll need some major changes to the P2P spec in regards to how we identify nodes which have blocks under a specific height or not. But until then, I guess it might just be better to treat this outside the P2P spec and as a client-side tool.
right. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I think we haven't made a firm decision on what to do, but regarding this, but I think at this stage we'd probably lean towards doing the checkpoint state somewhere in the future, and then if you don't sync to that, then you reject the chain. For now, because there's a lot of edge cases with like Aditya said, there's a lot of edge cases regarding syncing and networking that we have to address in order to do a proper start in the middle of the chain and sink backwards and we'll keep going forward. So I think we're leaning towards taking the easy route to get us to mainnet at this stage, and then implementing it in later, the full version in later.
So, question: should all the clients come together and somehow standardize this UX? Just for example, the flag name, and we pass in the head string and stuff like that, just so that when people switch client, it becomes easier.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. The other thing we need to agree on is like, so one of them is, as you mentioned, the flag name. The other is the format for whatever these checkpoints are, so that they don't have to be client specific.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Another thing Danny mentioned about this before is it might really help to mitigate some of the sync issues if we encounter any future hiccups on the testnet or the mainnet in the future, because you can kind of reject all other branches except this one specific thing that the user is inputting.
Yeah, I mean that base ability is definitely like a coordination tool beyond just the weak subjectivity security requirement. So it does open the door for conflict resolution if we need it. Okay. Aditya and I will make sure to give this some love in the first few days of next week so that we don't remain blocked on it. Okay. Networking. Like I mentioned earlier in the call, we're going to do a call on Wednesday. There's a number of things to discuss: V11 updates, progress on param choices, along with definitely some like potential DOS vectors that Proto's been investigating that kind of sit right in the networking layer, along with some of the network monitoring tools and other things that people are working on. That said, are the things that people would like to discuss today? Okay. That works for me. Spec discussion, any questions or comments on spec things in general? Great. And closing remarks. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share or discuss today? Okay. Quick meeting. Thank you, everyone. Sincerely, keep up the great work. I know y'all are working your asses off, and I know that the clients have gotten much better in the past month. So keep it up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.